What you are about to discover has nothing to do with willpower, nor with ignoring what you feel, nor with pretending that everything is fine, when, in reality, it is not. It is not about forcing yourself into a fake positive attitude or battling against every negative thought that arises in your mind. The true key to ensuring that nothing and no one can affect you anymore lies in something much deeper, something that most people overlook because they prefer to seek solutions outside of themselves, failing to realize that the only real change happens from within. Perhaps you have wondered why some people, no matter what happens, seem to move through life with an unshakable calm. They face crises, losses, and moments of uncertainty, yet they remain centered. Meanwhile, others seem to be on the verge of collapse, trapped in their own emotions and reactions, even in the most ordinary situations. Is it a matter of luck, personality, or is there a hidden principle that separates those who master their inner world from those who are enslaved by it? This is where most people go wrong. They believe that reality is objective, that things simply happen, and that their emotions are an inevitable consequence of external events. But this is not true. Everything you experience, absolutely everything, is filtered through the way you interpret life, through the beliefs you have carried for years, and through the emotions you have never learned to manage. It is as if you were wearing tinted glasses, coloring everything you see. No matter what is in front of you, you will always perceive it through that filter. And if that filter is distorted by fear, resentment, or guilt, then the world will reflect exactly that. Not because life is unfair, but because you cannot see beyond what is within you. But here is the key that no one has told you. It is not about avoiding pain or escaping difficult emotions. It is not about becoming immune to everything happening around you. It is about transforming the meaning you assign to each experience, about reprogramming the way you perceive reality, and about learning to turn every emotion into a tool for growth rather than a burden that keeps you trapped. The truth is, reality is not imposed upon you. It is interpreted. And when you understand this, when you learn to take control of that interpretation, you discover that you can choose how you respond to any situation. In that moment, you become free. Today, I am going to show you exactly how to do this, not with abstract theories, but with principles that have been used by those who have achieved a deep inner peace that depends on nothing and no one. You will discover how to transform fear into clarity, how to make negative emotions work in your favor instead of against you, and how to reach a state of unshakable serenity no matter what happens in your life. What you are about to understand has the power to change everything, but only if you are willing to look within yourself and question everything you have taken as truth until now. Because in the end, it is not what happens that determines your peace. It is the way you choose to experience it. And when you discover how to transform that process, you will realize that nothing and no one will ever affect you in the same way again. Imagine your life if you could remove those invisible glasses that distort your perception, allowing you to experience the world without the weight of your fears, limiting beliefs, and repressed emotions. The human mind is a complex labyrinth, a space where every thought, every reaction, and every emotion is shaped by deep layers we rarely explore consciously. Carl Jung, the visionary psychoanalyst, understood this better than anyone. He described the psyche as an iceberg. The visible part is the conscious mind, but beneath the surface lies a vast subconscious, a territory where past experiences, traumas, insecurities, and most importantly, our projections onto the world are stored. What we do not make conscious governs us, and everything we ignore within ourselves does not disappear. It manifests in our reality as if it were an inevitable fate. Think about how fear infiltrates your life, often without you realizing it. It disguises itself as doubt when you wonder whether you are good enough to try something new. It hides in procrastination when you delay what you truly desire but are too afraid to fail. It manifests in relationships where you give too much simply because you fear rejection or loneliness. Jung taught us that fear, like any other emotion, is not an enemy. It is a disguised teacher, a signal pointing to something within you that still needs to be acknowledged. But most people, instead of listening, fight against their emotions. They suppress what they feel, convince themselves that they should not be sad, that they should not get angry, that they should be strong all the time. And that is where the problem begins, because what you resist persists. A repressed emotion does not disappear. It becomes a weight you carry daily, a voice whispering in the background of your mind, a blockage that keeps you from moving forward without you even realizing it. Imagine a storm. The wind blows fiercely, the rain falls with intensity, the sky darkens. You try to resist, to push back the wind with your hands, to stop the rain, to contain the force of the storm. But the more you fight it, the more exhausted you become. The storm does not stop because you resist it. It stops when you allow it to pass. This is how the mind works. Every emotion you feel is a passing storm, not a permanent sentence. But most people remain trapped in trying to control what they feel, in the fear of facing what is inside them. Instead of listening to their emotions, they silence them with distractions, work, entertainment, relationships that only provide temporary comfort, continuing to avoid what truly needs to be seen. But what if, instead of fighting your emotions, you simply stopped? What if, instead of ignoring your sadness, you observed it? What if, instead of hiding your fear, you asked what it was trying to tell you? Every emotion carries a hidden message. Sadness often signals that something needs to be released, an attachment that no longer serves you, an expectation that was not met, a part of you that needs to be freed. Fear reveals limiting beliefs, deeply rooted ideas that you are not enough, that you do not deserve what you desire, that failure is something to be avoided at all costs. Anger, which we so often try to suppress, is actually a reminder that your boundaries are being crossed, that something in your environment is not respecting your true self. When you start seeing your emotions not as obstacles, but as guides, something within you changes. And when your inner world changes, your external world follows. Now think of a situation where you normally react automatically, perhaps an argument with someone close, a conflict at work, a moment when you feel insecure or attacked. Instead of acting on impulse, pause, breathe, observe the scene as if you were a spectator, someone watching from the outside without attachment. Ask yourself, which part of me is reacting right now? Is it truly the external situation that affects me, or is it something within me that was already there? The answers to these questions can completely change the way you live. Because when you understand that what happens outside only has power over you if something inside allows it, you begin to regain control. Jung spoke of the concept of the silent observer, that part of consciousness that does not get carried away by emotions or external circumstances. That space within you that no matter what happens, remains calm. When you access that part of your mind, you discover that nothing and no one has the power to affect you unless you grant them that power. That every time something destabilizes you, it is not because the world is unfair or because people hurt you. It is because there is something within you that still needs to be worked on. And there lies the true key to achieving unshakable peace. Not in changing the external world, but in transforming how you experience it. When you master this, storms no longer scare you because you understand they are temporary and that behind each one there is an opportunity to grow. And if you analyze your thoughts deeply, you will notice that many of them are not even yours. They were absorbed at some point in your life and unknowingly adopted as absolute truths. Here's the key. You don't have to keep holding on to it. Imagine for a moment that starting today, you decide to change the narrative. Instead of repeating to yourself that you are not enough, you begin to integrate the idea that you have always been capable, that the only thing that has held you back is the story you've told yourself. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It simply responds to the programming we feed it. If you start nourishing your mind with beliefs that empower you, your external reality will inevitably begin to reflect that change. Now, let's put this into a real-life context. Think of someone who has spent their entire life in constant fear of not being loved. Maybe they learned early on that they had to earn love through effort, pleasing everyone, sacrificing their own well-being in exchange for external validation. And now, as an adult, they live with the deep-seated feeling that they are never enough, that they must keep trying harder to avoid rejection. How can they break this cycle? The first step is to see it clearly. Jung spoke of shadow integration as the act of bringing to light what has been hidden within us. When this person realizes they have been trapped in a pattern of fear, fear of rejection, fear of not being worthy, they begin to reclaim their power. They come to understand that their worth is not defined by the validation of others, but by how they perceive themselves. And then something shifts. They start setting boundaries. They learn to say no without guilt. They begin to prioritize themselves without the fear of abandonment. And the most incredible thing, as they change, the people around them change too. They are no longer sought after just for what they give, but for who they truly are. And that is when the cycle breaks. Now consider another case. Someone who has always believed that failure is humiliating. Every time they try something new and don't achieve the expected result, they punish themselves with self-destructive thoughts. They compare themselves to others, feeling stuck, believing the world is placing insurmountable obstacles in their path. But what happens when they begin to see failure not as a shameful defeat, but as an inevitable part of the process? When they understand that every mistake is a disguised teacher, their entire relationship with life changes. Jung once said, "Life does not happen to you, it happens through you." If this person starts interpreting every fall as an opportunity to learn rather than as a punishment, their fear dissolves. They are no longer afraid to try again because they understand that their worth is not tied to the outcome, but to the growth each attempt allows them to achieve. What many people don't realize is that every thought we nurture is a seed. If you water the seeds of fear, resentment, or doubt every day, they will eventually grow into the trees that dominate your life. But if instead you choose to plant seeds of confidence, inner peace, and self-belief, your reality will transform in a radical way. And this isn't just an abstract concept, it's something you can experience immediately. The next time a limiting thought enters your mind, don't automatically accept it as truth. Observe it, question it, challenge it. Ask yourself whether it truly belongs to you or if it is merely an echo of the past, something you can choose to let go of. And when you do, you'll realize that the only power those thoughts had over you was the power you yourself had given them. Here's the most revealing part of all this. You don't need the world to change for you to experience a different reality. All you need is to change the way you relate to what happens. A person who sees life as a series of obstacles and tragedies will continue to find proof of that belief at every turn. But someone who decides to see life as an opportunity for growth, as a space where every situation carries a lesson, will begin to experience the world in a completely different way. Jung also said, "What you resist persists." This means that the more you fight against life with struggle and fear, the more you will encounter exactly what you are trying to avoid. But if you learn to flow with life, if you open yourself to the possibility that every experience has something to offer, tension disappears. Now imagine the power of living this way, without fear of failure, because you know it does not define you. Without fear of others' opinions, because you've understood that the only thing that truly matters is what you think of yourself. Without fear of uncertainty, because you trust that no matter what life brings, you will have the ability to handle it. This is true freedom. Not a freedom that depends on circumstances, but one that is born within you. Because when you free yourself from the invisible chains your mind has imposed on you, nothing and no one can imprison you again. And in that moment, you discover that the peace you've always sought was never outside of you. It was within, waiting to be recognized. When we do not face our shadows, they manifest in ways we fail to recognize. Anxiety, constant conflicts, repetitive patterns that seem to play out over and over. But when we choose to look directly at what we have avoided, we discover that it is not our enemy. It is a part of us that needs to be understood. Think about a fear you've carried for years. Maybe it's the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, or the fear of not being enough. Every time you try to step outside your comfort zone, that fear emerges, whispering reasons why you shouldn't even try. But have you ever stopped to ask it where it comes from? To whom does that voice truly belong? Maybe it stems from an experience in childhood. Maybe it echoes words from someone you once admired. But here's the key. That voice is not you. It is merely an echo from the past, repeating itself in your mind. And here is where you can do something different. Instead of fighting against that fear or trying to ignore it, pause for a moment and listen. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to teach me? Maybe it's showing you that you need to develop more confidence in yourself. Maybe it's teaching you that you must learn to validate your own worth without depending on external opinions. Or perhaps it's telling you that it's time to stop running and face what you truly want. When, instead of rejecting your emotions, you choose to explore them, fear loses its grip on you. You stop being a puppet of your past and become the architect of your present. Let's apply this to a real scenario. Imagine you're in an important conversation, maybe with a boss, a business partner, or someone who means a lot to you. Before speaking, you feel anxiety rising. Your mind fills with doubts, and your body tenses. Before, you might have tried to suppress those emotions, ignore them, or let them control you. But this time, you do something different. You take a deep breath. You acknowledge the emotion without letting it overpower you. You ask yourself, what part of me is feeling this? What story am I telling myself right now? And suddenly, you realize that the fear is not coming from the current situation. It is an old pattern resurfacing. In that moment, instead of reacting from insecurity, you choose to respond from clarity. You speak with confidence, with presence, because you are no longer acting from an old wound, but from your most conscious self. This is how transformation begins. And when you stop fighting against yourself, when you embrace every part of you, you step into a life that is truly yours. When you learn to see reality through a different lens, it's not about pretending that everything is fine, but rather about learning to be at peace, even when everything around you seems chaotic. It's about realizing that the power you've been searching for outside of yourself has always been within you, waiting to be reclaimed. And once you finally see this truth, nothing and no one can affect you in the same way ever again, because you've come to understand that true freedom is not about controlling the world, but about freeing yourself from the illusion that you need to do so. Imagine waking up one morning feeling exhausted, but this exhaustion isn't because you didn't get enough sleep. It's deeper than that. It's the weight of something you've been carrying inside you, an emotional burden that refuses to be ignored. Perhaps it's a conversation that didn't go the way you hoped. Maybe it's a criticism someone made about you, words that linger in your mind longer than they should. Or perhaps it's a mistake you made, something you can't seem to forgive yourself for, a regret that keeps resurfacing. You find yourself wondering, why, despite all my efforts, do other people's opinions still affect me so much? Why do I keep replaying moments in my head that I should have already moved past? The answer isn't out there. It's not about what others did or said. It's about how you interpreted their words, how your mind constructed a story around the event and decided to make it part of your identity. This is the core issue for most people. We believe that the cause of our suffering exists outside of us, in circumstances, in people, in the luck we were given. But Carl Jung made it clear, everything that disturbs you in the external world is actually a reflection of something within you that has yet to heal. It's not the criticism itself that hurts. It's the part of you that still doubts your own worth. It's not other people's indifference that frustrates you. It's your own unmet need for validation that continues to demand attention. And until you address the root of what's affecting you, you will remain trapped in the same cycles, repeating the same patterns over and over again. Now, imagine that one day you choose to do something different. Instead of reacting impulsively when something upsets you, you pause for a moment. You take a deep breath, and rather than letting anger or sadness consume you, you ask yourself, why does this affect me so much? What part of me is feeling this reaction? As you do this, you start to see the truth. The problem was never the other person, nor the situation itself. The real issue was the story you created around it. You realize that the fear of rejection you feel today didn't start today. It began years ago when you first learned to associate acceptance with your sense of self-worth. You recognize that the guilt you carry isn't truly yours. It's a habit you developed because at some point you believed that making mistakes meant you weren't good enough. And this is where you take back control. Instead of being overwhelmed by emotions, you ask yourself, if this emotion were a message, what would it be telling me? Perhaps it's telling you that you need to trust yourself more, that it's time to stop seeking validation from the outside world and start giving it to yourself. Maybe it's showing you that you need to stop living according to other people's expectations and start building your own truth. The key isn't what you feel, it's what you do with those feelings. And in that moment, instead of feeding your emotions with repetitive thoughts, you choose to act from a different place. Now picture another scenario. You're in the middle of a heated argument with someone close to you. The words exchanged are becoming more aggressive. Emotions are running high. In the past, you would have fallen into the same trap, raising your voice, letting anger take control. But this time, you remember something Jung said about the shadow self. What irritates us most in others is a reflection of something we haven't yet integrated within ourselves. Instead of matching their anger, you pause and ask yourself, what part of me is reacting to this? Is this person truly making me feel this way? Or is there something deeper at play? And in that instant, instead of being a prisoner of your emotions, you become their master. You take control, not by suppressing what you feel, but by choosing how you respond. This seemingly small shift in perspective has a profound impact on your life. You stop feeling like a victim of your circumstances, and instead, you begin to see every emotion, every conflict, every challenge as an opportunity to understand yourself better. You no longer react out of fear or insecurity. Instead, you respond from a place of awareness, understanding that nothing and no one can truly affect you unless you allow it. And when you reach this point, when you start acting from consciousness rather than reaction, you make a powerful discovery. Most of the problems that once seemed overwhelming begin to fade away, not because the world has changed, but because you are now seeing it through different eyes. This is where the most powerful concept of all comes in: emotional responsibility. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That means that every emotion you experience, every thought that crosses your mind, every reaction you have to the world around you is an opportunity to take control of your own story. It's not about denying what you feel. It's about asking yourself, how can I transform this into something that strengthens me? Now think about a recent moment when you felt hurt by someone. Maybe someone ignored you when you expected their attention. Maybe someone said something that you took as an attack. Instead of getting stuck in the narrative of injustice, try this. Close your eyes and visualize that person, not as an enemy, but as an unintentional teacher who has come into your life to reveal something about yourself. Ask yourself, what part of me created this experience? How can I use this to grow stronger? And as you do, you begin to realize something profound. The real lesson isn't about them. It's about you. You understand that you don't need external validation to feel worthy, that you don't need anyone to change for you to be at peace, that everything you've been searching for outside has always been within you. This is the moment when the power returns to you, when you stop blaming others for how you feel and start seeing every emotion as a message, an opportunity to evolve. This is when you understand that peace is not something you find, it's something you cultivate, that the only person who can define who you are and how you feel is you. And in that moment, the world loses its hold over you, because for the first time, you are in control. You are sending a new signal to your mind, telling it that the old patterns of anxiety, insecurity, or anger are no longer the only option. Every small, conscious decision you make is like rewriting the code in your mind, replacing limiting beliefs with new ones that set you free. But this is where many people get stuck. They want to change, yet they cling to the same stories about themselves. They keep saying, "I'm just a sensitive person. I always get affected by what others say. I can't control my emotions." Do you see how these statements become an identity? As long as you define yourself this way, you will keep repeating the same cycles. But what if you started questioning them? What if, every time you thought, "I'm too emotional," you paused and asked yourself, "Is this really true? Or is it just something I've repeated so many times that I've come to believe it?" This is the real work. Changing the internal narrative. It's not just about empty affirmations. It's about creating new experiences that reinforce real transformation. Jung spoke of the importance of integration, of bringing into the light what has always remained in the shadows. And that means that instead of running from your pain, you sit with it, you observe it, and instead of rejecting it, you accept it, not as your fate, but as part of your story. Because in the end, words only have the power you give them. If someone tells you you'll never succeed, those words can only hurt you if a part of you fears they might be true. But if you've done the inner work, if you've built your own confidence, those words become nothing more than background noise, powerless, weightless. But here lies the key question. How do you reach a point where nothing affects you? It is not by repressing emotions or convincing yourself otherwise. This only creates a fragile shield that shatters at the slightest impact. True power lies in flexibility, in the ability to feel everything without letting anything control you. Carl Jung once said that real freedom comes when you stop identifying with every passing thought and fleeting emotion. When you learn to observe your feelings without attachment, without allowing them to define who you are, you unlock a new level of self-awareness. Let's consider an example. Perhaps you've often felt that people take advantage of you, that you give too much and receive too little in return. In the past, this would frustrate you, making you feel used and powerless. But now, instead of remaining trapped in the victim's role, you decide to change the dynamic. You ask yourself, where am I failing to establish boundaries? Why do I struggle to say no? Little by little, you start setting clear rules, not from anger, but from self-respect. You realize that when you respect yourself, others begin to do the same. When you stop yielding out of fear of losing people, you actually gain something far more valuable: your peace. This is the point many never reach, because they continue waiting for the world to change first. They expect people to be kinder, circumstances to be more favorable, and life to stop testing them. But the truth is, real change always starts from within. And when you change, the entire world responds to this new version of you. It's like tuning a radio to a new frequency. When you stop broadcasting fear, insecurity, or frustration, you begin to attract experiences that resonate with your new energy. Suddenly, what once seemed impossible, serenity, confidence, and clarity, becomes your natural state. Now imagine for a moment what your life would be like if nothing and no one could shake your inner balance. If every time someone tried to drag you into conflict, you remained unshaken. If each time a difficult situation arose, instead of reacting impulsively, you could observe it with calm detachment. If every emotion that surfaced was just a passing wave, in the vast ocean of your consciousness, incapable of destabilizing you. That peace you envision is not an unattainable ideal. It is a real possibility. But only if you commit to this process, only if you decide to stop giving power to external factors and start building an internal fortress that nothing and no one can tear down. And when you do, when you truly integrate this change, you'll notice something incredible. The world will stop feeling like a hostile place. People will no longer have the power to hurt you. The situations that once caused you anxiety will lose their grip on you because you will no longer see them through the same fearful lens. You will finally be in control, and once you taste this freedom, you will never again allow anything or anyone to take your peace away. Because when you grant yourself the permission to prioritize your well-being without guilt, everything in your life begins to align naturally. Jung spoke about the importance of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, free from the external influences that have conditioned you. And this begins with the courage to listen to yourself in a world that constantly tells you what you should feel, think, or do. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you ignored what you truly wanted out of fear of disappointing someone else? How many times have you suppressed an emotion because you were taught that feeling too much is a sign of weakness? How often have you forced yourself to act a certain way just to fit in? Each time you've done this, without realizing it, you have given more power to the external world over your own inner peace. The real problem is not that the world tries to influence you, because it always will, but rather that you distance yourself from your true self just to meet others' expectations. This is where the practice of inner silence becomes essential. Jung believed that the mind is constantly filled with noise, an internal dialogue we rarely question. But what would happen if you took just a moment each day to simply be with yourself, without distractions, without your phone, without social media, without the need to do anything, just you and your presence? In those moments, you begin to notice things that previously went unnoticed. You become aware of what you truly feel, what you need to change, and what your intuition has been trying to tell you all along. Imagine a situation where someone makes a hurtful comment. In the past, you would have reacted instantly, feeling as if those words had pierced through you like an arrow. But now, instead of allowing that comment to dictate your emotional state, you take a deep breath and ask yourself, do I really need to take this personally? Or does this say more about the other person than it does about me? In that moment, you feel something new, detachment, not because you don't care, but because you finally understood that what others say or do has no power to define you. This level of clarity is not achieved overnight. It is a practice, a commitment to return, again and again, to the role of the observer rather than getting caught in the waves of every emotion. And the most fascinating thing is that when you begin to live this way, the external world also changes. Situations that once seemed unbearable lose their emotional charge. People who used to trigger you no longer have that power. And most importantly, you start experiencing a lightness you never thought possible. But there's one more thing you need to know. This process does not mean you will never feel pain, frustration, or sadness again. The difference is that now you won't get stuck in those emotions. You'll learn to see them as temporary visitors rather than absolute truths, like waves in the ocean, intense for a moment, but always fleeting. Instead of fighting the current, you simply let it pass, trusting that on the other side of the storm, there will always be calm. So, what can you do right now to start building that inner strength? First, question yourself. Every time you feel an intense emotion, instead of reacting automatically, ask yourself a simple question. What part of me is being triggered right now? Not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself better. Then, allow the emotion to be there without trying to suppress or change it. Breathe through it, observe it, and you will notice how, little by little, it loses its grip on you. And finally, remember this. Inner peace is not something you find in external circumstances, nor in the validation of others. It is something you build within yourself with every choice, every thought, every moment in which you decide that nothing and no one can take away the calm you have worked so hard to cultivate. That is true power. And once you discover it, the world will never look the same again. If you enjoyed this content and want to continue learning more about these fascinating topics, please subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and share this video with your friends. Together, we can continue exploring and discovering more knowledge that can transform our lives. Don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts and suggestions. See you in the next video.